Malik Renner's alarm buzzed at 5:30, same as every weekday for the past 3 years. He rolled out of bed, his Marine training making the movement automatic despite the ache in his lower back from yesterday's shift at the meatpacking plant. 37 years old, and his body already kept score of every doubled-up workday. The house stayed quiet around him. Tessa wouldn't wake for another hour, and Calvin never stirred before 7. Malik padded to the kitchen, started the coffee, and checked his phone. 2 missed calls from the plant supervisor. He called back later. "Morning, baby." Tessa's voice drifted from the bedroom doorway. She wore her blue silk robe, the one he'd bought her for their anniversary 2 years back. Her blonde hair hung loose around her shoulders. "Morning." Malik poured coffee into her favorite mug, the white one with tiny flowers. "Train's at 8:15, same as always." She accepted the mug, fingers brushing his. "You look tired. Double shift does that." He grabbed his lunch from the refrigerator, ham sandwich and an apple wrapped in plastic. "Calvin's got that field trip today. Permission slips on the counter. I signed it yesterday." Tessa sipped her coffee, watching him over the rim. "Malik, we should talk about." "About what?" "Nothing. Later." She turned away. "I'll get Calvin ready." Malik studied her retreating figure. Something had changed in her voice, but he couldn't place what. He shrugged it off and headed for the shower. By 7:30. They were in his pickup truck. Calvin buckled into his booster seat behind them. The boy chattered about seeing the science museum, his small hands gesturing wildly as he described the dinosaur bones he'd learned about on YouTube. "Dad, will you come with us?" Calvin's voice carried that hopeful note that always twisted something in Malik's chest. "Wish I could, buddy. Got to work. You always got to work. That's how we keep the lights on." Malik caught Tessa's glance in the rearview mirror. She looked out the passenger window, jaw tight. The train station parking lot buzzed with commuters heading to Research Triangle Park. Malik pulled up to the drop-off zone, and Tessa gathered her laptop bag and purse. "Pick you up at 6, he asked. "I'll catch a ride with Jennifer. Don't wait up if I'm late." She leaned over and kissed his cheek, but it felt perfunctory. "Love you. Love you too." She climbed out and walked toward the platform without looking back. Malik watched her go, noting how she checked her phone twice before disappearing into the crowd. "Dad!" Calvin's voice broke his concentration. "We going home now?" Malik shifted into drive. "That's the plan." The drive back took 12 minutes through Durham County's suburban sprawl. Their neighborhood sat between the nicer developments and the older, run-down areas where Malik had grown up. The houses were small but well-maintained, with postage stamp yards and 2-car driveways. Malik turned onto Maple Street and slowed as their house came into view. The single-story brick ranch with white trim looked the same as always, but Calvin's grip on his arm made him stop. "We can't go home today, Dad." The words hit Malik like cold water. Calvin's voice carried a weight no 5-year-old should have, quiet and filled with dread. "What do you mean, buddy?" Calvin's eyes were wide, serious. "We just can't. Please." Malik studied his son's face. The boy wasn't playing games or testing boundaries. Fear lived in those dark eyes, real and immediate. "Okay." Malik made a decision that would change everything. "We won't go home yet." He drove past their house and parked 3 streets over, behind a row of oak trees that provided cover. Calvin relaxed slightly, but kept watching the road behind them. "Stay here, Cal. I'm going to check something. Don't leave me." The panic in Calvin's voice stopped Malik cold. "I won't leave you. We'll go together." They walked back through the neighborhood, Calvin's small hand gripping Malik's with desperate strength. Mrs. Patterson was watering her garden next door to their house, which gave them perfect cover to slip in her backyard. From behind Mrs. Patterson's tool shed, they had a clear view of their front door and driveway. Calvin crouched beside Malik, both of them hidden by the wooden structure and overgrown bushes. "There," Calvin whispered, pointing at a black sedan pulled into their driveway. A woman stepped out, tall and slim with short auburn hair. She wore a navy business suit and carried a leather briefcase. What made Malik's blood run cold was watching her pull a key from her purse and unlock his front door like she belonged there. "Who is that?" Malik asked. "She's been there before," Calvin said quietly. "Lots of times." The woman disappeared inside their house. Malik checked his watch, 9:15. Tessa's train would be pulling into RTP about now. They waited. Mrs. Patterson finished her gardening and went inside. A mail truck rumbled past. Two joggers ran by, breathing hard in the morning heat. At 10:30, the woman emerged from the house. She looked around carefully before walking to her car. Malik memorized her license plate. North Carolina tags, XBG 4471. After she drove away, Malik and Calvin stayed hidden for another 10 minutes. "Dad, are we in trouble?" Calvin asked. "No, buddy, but something's not right." Malik stood, brushing dirt from his knees. "Let's go get some breakfast and figure this out." They drove to Jimmy's Diner on 9th Street, a place where truckers and shift workers grab quick meals. Calvin ordered chocolate chip pancakes and milk. Malik asked for coffee and scrambled eggs, but barely touched either. "Calvin, I need you to tell me about that lady. When did you first see her?" Calvin cut his pancakes into precise squares, concentrating on the task. "She came when you were at night work. First time was after my birthday. That would be 3 months ago. What did she do?" "Talked to Mama in the kitchen." They looked at papers. Mama cried. Malik's stomach tightened. "Did you hear what they talked about?" "Some words. Money words." "And?" Calvin's face scrunched up. "Court words." The diner's air conditioning cycled on, but Malik felt sweat gather at his collar. "Court words. Money words. And a stranger with a key to his house." "Did the lady ever see you?" "No. I hid in my room. Mama told me to stay there when she comes." Malik paid the check, and they drove to Durham County Middle School, where Malik's day shift started at 11. He called in sick, something he'd never done in 3 years of employment. The secretary, Mrs. Chun, sounded surprised. "You never take sick days, Malik? You feeling okay? Just need to handle some personal business. I'll be in tomorrow. Take care of yourself." Malik drove to Carlos Navarro's garage, a converted gas station on the south side of town. Carlos had served 2 tours in Afghanistan with Malik's unit before getting out to marry his high school girlfriend. The marriage lasted 8 months, but Carlos kept his mechanical skills and opened shop 3 years ago. "Malik," Carlos wiped his hands on a greasy rag as they walked into the garage. "What brings you by?" "This your boy." "This is Calvin." "Cal, this is Uncle Carlos." Calvin hung close to Malik's side, but managed a small wave. "We need to talk," Malik said. "Privately." Carlos nodded and led them to his office, a cramped space above the garage floor. Calvin settled into a corner chair with a coloring book Carlos kept for customers' kids. "What's going on?" Carlos asked. Malik told him everything. Calvin's warning, the mysterious woman, the key, the visits while he worked nights. Carlos listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker. "You think Tessa's having an affair? I think it's worse than that." Malik pulled out his phone and showed Carlos the license plate number he'd typed in. "Court words, Carlos. Money words. And she's been acting strange for weeks." "Strange how?" "Distant. Checking her phone constantly. She used to tell me everything about her day at work. Now, she barely mentions it." Malik rubbed his face. "And there's other stuff. Small stuff." "Like what?" "She's been asking about my work schedule. Wanted to know if I ever thought about quitting the night job. Asked about my military records last week. Said she was curious about my discharge papers." Carlos frowned. "That's not curiosity, brother. That's reconnaissance. That's what I'm afraid of." They drove back to the school so Malik could handle something that had been nagging at him. He left Calvin with Carlos and went to the main office. "Mrs. Rodriguez." Malik approached the finance clerk's desk. "Can I ask you something?" Maria Rodriguez had worked at the school for 15 years and knew every employee's business. She looked up from her computer with concern. "Of course, Malik. Everything okay? Did anyone call asking about my employment recently? Like verification or payroll information?" Her face changed. "Actually, yes. About 2 weeks ago, someone from a law firm called asking for employment verification and pay stubs. I sent them over like always." Malik's chest tightened. "What law firm? Let me check." She pulled out a file folder. "Atwood and Associates." They said it was for spousal support calculations. The name hit Malik like a punch. Atwood, the woman in his house, could be connected to this law firm. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I never authorized that request." Her face paled. "Oh no. Malik, I'm so sorry. They said they had authorization from your wife. It's not your fault, but I need copies of everything you sent them. I'll get them right now. Malik walked out of the school with a folder containing his employment verification, pay stubs for the past 6 months, and a copy of his benefits information. Someone was building a case against him, and they were using his own wife to do it. Back at Carlos's garage, Malik spread the papers across the workbench. Calvin played with toy cars in the corner, making engine noises. This is bad, Carlos said, studying the documents. They're documenting your income for court, probably divorce court or custody court. Malik's voice came out flat. Calvin's not safe. What do you mean? If Tessa's planning to leave me, she'll try to take Calvin. And if she's got lawyers and I don't. Malik didn't finish the sentence. Carlos straightened up. Then we better find out what she's really up to. And we better do it fast. That afternoon, while Calvin napped on Carlos's office couch, Malik made a decision that went against every honorable instinct he possessed. He was going to spy on his own wife. But first, he needed to get into their house without being seen. And he needed to find out what Tessa was hiding in their bedroom safe. Carlos, remember that job in Kandahar? The one where we had to get into that compound without triggering the alarm system. Carlos grinned grimly. You thinking what I think you're thinking? I'm thinking it's time to use some old skills for a new war. The safe in their bedroom closet was a small fireproof box Tessa had insisted on buying after a break-in 2 streets over. She'd chosen the combination, Calvin's birthday. Malik had thought it was sweet at the time. Now he realized how naive he'd been about a lot of things at T4 in the afternoon. With Calvin still sleeping and Carlos standing watch outside, Malik used techniques learned in military intelligence to disable the safe's lock mechanism. The Marine Corps had taught him many skills. Breaking and entering wasn't officially one of them, but soldiers learned what they needed to survive. Inside the safe, underneath their passports and birth certificates, Malik found documents that made his blood freeze. The first was a life insurance policy on him for $800,000. The policy had been updated 3 weeks ago, increasing the payout from $200,000. He'd never signed anything, never been notified. The second was a set of legal papers for sole custody of Calvin. The forms were pre-filled with allegations of domestic violence, financial abuse, and mental instability. The dates were forged to make it look like Tessa had been documenting problems for months. His signature was forged on several pages. The third was a receipt from a Marriott in Raleigh. A private suite, paid for monthly for the past 4 months. Registered under Tessa's name, and someone called L. Atwood. Malik photographed everything with his phone, then carefully returned the papers to their exact positions. He restored the safe's lock mechanism and closed the closet door. His hands were shaking when he called Carlos. You were right, Malik said. It's worse than an affair. She's trying to destroy me. Back at the garage, Malik showed Carlos the photos. Calvin was awake now, coloring quietly while the adults talked in low voices. This is conspiracy, Carlos said. Insurance fraud, custody fraud, forgery. Malik, she could go to prison for this. If I can prove it, and if I can stay alive long enough. Malik stared at the insurance policy photo. $800,000 is a lot of motivation for an accident. You think she'd actually... I don't know what she'd do anymore. 3 months ago, I thought I knew my wife. Now I find out she's been planning to frame me as an abusive husband and take my son. Malik's voice hardened. Calvin's not even safe in his own home. So what's the plan? Malik looked at Calvin, who was drawing a picture of a dinosaur with careful concentration. The boy had tried to protect him this morning, had somehow known danger waited at home. Now it was Malik's turn to protect Calvin. First, we find out who L. Atwood is and what role she plays in this. Second, we document everything Tessa does from now on. And third, Malik met Carlos's eyes. We get ready for war. That evening, Malik did something he'd never done in 5 years of marriage. He lied to his wife's face. How was your day? Tessa asked when she came home at 7:30. She looked tired, her makeup slightly smudged. Same as always. Clean classrooms, fixed broken desks. Malik was washing dishes, keeping his hands busy so she couldn't see them shake. How about you? Meetings. Data analysis. The usual. She grabbed a wine glass and poured herself red wine. Jennifer gave me a ride home like I said she would. That was nice of her. Calvin ran into the kitchen and hugged Tessa's legs. Mama, I went to Uncle Carlos's shop today. He has lots of tools. Tessa's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. Uncle Carlos. My buddy from the service, Malik said casually. Calvin got to see me today when I stopped by to get my truck looked at. I thought you were working. Called in sick. Stomach bug. Malik dried his hands and turned to face her. Feeling better now, though. Tessa nodded, but Malik caught the quick calculation in her eyes. She was wondering if his sick day meant anything. If he'd been somewhere he shouldn't have been. I need to make some calls for work, she said. You can handle Calvin's bath tonight? Sure thing. She disappeared into their bedroom with her wine and phone. Malik heard the door close, then the murmur of a conversation he couldn't make out. While Calvin played in the bathtub, Malik stepped into the hallway and pressed his ear to the bedroom door. Tessa's voice came through faintly. Has to be soon. He's getting suspicious. No, I can handle it. The documents are ready. Friday night would be perfect. He'll be at work? Malik's blood turned to ice. Friday night. 2 days away, he heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly returned to the bathroom, where Calvin was making soap beard with the bubbles. Look, Dad, I'm Santa. That's great, buddy. Malik helped Calvin rinse off, his mind racing. Whatever Tessa was planning, it was happening Friday night while he was at the meatpacking plant. After Calvin was in bed, Malik sat on their couch, pretending to watch television, while Tessa worked on her laptop at the kitchen table. The house felt like a stage set, both of them playing roles in a performance neither acknowledged. I'm going to bed, Tessa announced at 10 o'clock. I'll be up in a few minutes. She paused behind his chair and rested her hands on his shoulders. Her touch felt cold through his shirt. Malik, I want you to know that I love you. Whatever happens, remember that I loved you. The word sounded like a goodbye, or a warning. I love you too, he said, because it was still true despite everything. That was the worst part. After finding the insurance papers and custody documents, after learning about her secret hotel room and mysterious partner, he still loved the woman who was trying to destroy him. She kissed the top of his head and went to bed. Malik sat in the dark living room until midnight, listening to her breathe in the next room and trying to figure out how to save his son and himself. Friday was still 2 days away. He had that much time to turn the tables. 8:06 in the morning. Malik made coffee and called Carlos. I need your help with something big, he said quietly. And I need it today. What kind of help? The kind that might save Calvin's life. Carlos arrived at 7:30 with a toolbox and a grim expression. Calvin was eating cereal at the kitchen table, and Tessa was getting ready for work in the bedroom. Morning, Tessa, Carlos called out when she emerged. Carlos, right? Nice to see you again. Her smile looked genuine, but Malik caught the wariness in her eyes. Malik didn't mention you were coming by. Truck trouble, Malik said smoothly. Carlos is going to take a look while I'm at work. I'll be out of your way in no time, Carlos added. Just need to check a few things under the hood. Tessa nodded and grabbed her coffee mug. Malik, can you drop me at the station? My car's making that noise again. Sure thing. The drive to the train station was quiet except for Calvin's chatter about a cartoon he'd watched. Malik found himself memorizing details. The way Tessa checked her phone 3 times in 5 minutes. How she kept glancing in the side mirror. The way she kissed Calvin goodbye like she might not see him for a while. Have a good day, she told Malik, and again her words sounded like goodbye. After dropping her off, Malik drove Calvin to school and returned home to find Carlos already at work. But he wasn't looking at Malik's truck. He was setting up surveillance equipment. Tell me what you need to know, Carlos said, pulling a small camera from his toolbox. Everything. Phone calls, visitors, what she does when she thinks no one's watching. Malik felt sick about violating his wife's privacy, but Calvin's safety mattered more than his conscience. And Carlos, I need you to help me check on something else. What? That woman we saw yesterday. Elle Atwood. I need to know who she is and what she wants with my family. Carlos nodded and pulled out his laptop. I still got some contact from my MP days. Let me make some calls. While Carlos worked on surveillance and research, Malik went to his day job at the middle school. But concentration was impossible. Every phone ring made him jump. Every shadow in his peripheral vision could be someone coming to tell him something had happened to Calvin at lunch, He called Calvin's school to check on him. He's fine, Mr. Renner, the secretary assured him. Eating lunch with his class right now. Is everything okay? Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. At 2 o'clock, Carlos called with information that made Malik's world shift again. Dr. Leona Atwood, Carlos said. Age 43, lives in Chapel Hill. She's a biotech consultant, but get this, she's also got a law degree. And Malik? She's got a record. What kind of record? Fraud investigation in Atlanta 3 years ago. Never went to trial, but she was suspected of falsifying medical documents for insurance claims. And there's something else. I found someone who knows her. Who? My cousin Maria's friend, Rosario. She works at the plant where you do night shifts. She recognized Atwood's photo immediately. Malik's pulse quickened. Recognized her how? That's something you better hear in person. Can you get off work early? Malik found his supervisor and explained he had a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie. He met Carlos and a small, quiet woman named Rosario Mejia at a coffee shop near the plant. Rosario looked nervous, her dark eyes darting around the room before settling on Malik. Carlos says you need to know about Dr. Atwood, she said in accented English. Anything you can tell me. Rosario pulled out her phone and showed him a photo Carlos had sent her. This woman, she came to Atlanta 4 years ago. She said she was volunteer doctor for clinic that help women like me. Women like you. Women with no papers. Women who need help but scared to ask. Rosario's voice dropped. But she wasn't helping. She was using us. Malik leaned forward. Using you how? She make us sign papers we couldn't read. Said it was for medical care, but really it was for experiments. Drug tests. She worked with biotech company that pay her for test subjects. Carlos added, Rosario got out before anything happened to her, but other women weren't so lucky. Some got sick. Some disappeared. The investigation closed when Dr. Atwood left Atlanta. Rosario continued. She had lawyers, good lawyers, made everything go away. Malik felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Rosario, would you be willing to sign a statement about what you know? Something official? If it help you, yes. That woman hurt people. She should not be free to hurt more. After Rosario left, Carlos and Malik sat in the coffee shop planning their next moves. Your wife's mixed up with a dangerous person, Carlos said. This Atwood woman isn't just having an affair with Tessa. She's using her for something bigger. The biotech connection, Malik realized. Tessa works for a biotech company. She has access to data, research, maybe even samples. Corporate espionage has to be. And I'm the fall guy. If something goes wrong, they pin it on the unstable ex-soldier husband. Malik's phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Working late again. Don't wait up. It's starting, Malik said. Whatever they're planning for tomorrow night, they're setting it up now. That evening, Malik picked up Calvin from after-school care and took him to McDonald's for dinner. The boy seemed subdued, picking at his chicken nuggets. Dad, are you and Mama getting divorced? The question hit Malik like a physical blow. Why would you ask that, buddy? Tommy Martinez's parents got divorced. He said they fought a lot first, then his dad moved away. Calvin's eyes were serious beyond his years. You and Mama don't fight, but something's wrong. Malik reached across the table and took Calvin's small hand. Cal, I need you to know something. No matter what happens between your mama and me, I will always be your dad. Always. Nothing can change that. Promise. I promise. But even as he said the words, Malik wondered if he could keep that promise. If Tessa's plan worked, if he ended up dead or in prison, what would happen to Calvin? They drove home to find Tessa's car in the driveway. She was in the kitchen, cooking dinner despite her text about working late. You guys already ate? She asked, seeing Calvin's Happy Meal toy. We grabbed something quick, Malik said. Thought you were working late. Meeting got canceled. She didn't meet his eyes. I made your favorite. Pot roast. The smell was wonderful. And for a moment Malik felt a stab of nostalgia for better times. Sunday dinners when they were still a real family, before secrets and lies and insurance policies. That's nice, he said. I'll eat later. Need to get ready for work. His night shift at the meatpacking plant started at 11. As he gathered his work clothes, Tessa followed him into the bedroom. Malik, I was thinking, maybe you should call in sick tonight. Why? You've been working so hard. You deserve a break. Her voice carried a strange urgency. We could watch a movie, spend time together. Every instinct Malik possessed screamed danger. This was at the setup Carlos's surveillance had been designed to catch. Can't call in sick 2 days this week, he said. Need the overtime pay. Tessa's face tightened for just a moment before she smiled again. Of course. I understand. But Malik saw the calculation behind her eyes. If you want to work tonight, whatever they had planned would proceed. If he stayed home, they'd have to adjust that T10:30. Malik kissed Calvin goodnight and hugged Tessa goodbye. She held onto him longer than usual. Drive safely, she whispered against his ear. Always do. But instead of driving to the plant, Malik parked 2 blocks away and called in sick. Then he walked back through the neighborhood, using skills learned in urban warfare to approach his own house unseen. Carlos was waiting in Mrs. Patterson's backyard with night vision equipment and a camera. She made 3 phone calls after you left, Carlos whispered. 1 to Atwood, 1 to someone called, and 1 I couldn't hear clearly. Any visitors? Not yet. But there's movement in your house. Kitchen lights, then bedroom, now back to kitchen. They settled in to wait. At midnight, the black sedan pulled into Malik's driveway. Dr. Leona Atwood stepped out, but this time she wasn't alone. A man emerged from the passenger seat, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. That's the guy I've been calling him, Carlos whispered, snapping photos. Malik watched them enter his house with Tessa's key. Through the living room window, he could see 3 figures moving around, talking animatedly. They're planning something for right now, Malik realized. Something that required me to be at work. At 12:30, all 3 figures moved toward the back of the house, toward Calvin's bedroom. Malik was moving before he realized it, crossing the yard in a combat crouch. Carlos grabbed his arm. Wait, let's see what they do first. They're near my son. If you go in there now, you don't have evidence. You have a breaking and entering charge. Malik forced himself to stop, every parental instinct screaming at him to get to Calvin. Through Calvin's bedroom window, he could see shadows moving around the boy's bed. Then the figures moved back toward the living room. After 10 minutes, the man left through the front door. Dr. Atwood stayed another hour before departing. Carlos and Malik waited until 2 in the morning before approaching the house. Malik used his key to enter quietly, his heart pounding as he checked on Calvin. The boy was sleeping peacefully, but something was different. His bedroom smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals, and his sheets looked freshly changed in the living room. Malik found what they'd been doing. Papers were spread across the coffee table, documents he recognized from the safe, plus new ones he'd never seen. Divorce papers, Carlos whispered, photographing everything. And look at this. A manila envelope contained photographs of Malik that he'd never posed for. Pictures of him leaving work, picking up Calvin, talking to Carlos. Someone had been following him for weeks. But the most chilling discovery was a small glass vial on the kitchen counter, nearly empty, but still containing traces of clear liquid. We need to get this tested, Malik said. What do you think it is? I think they drugged Calvin's milk. Malik's voice was deadly quiet. I think they were going to make it look like I did it. The next morning, Malik sent Calvin to stay with Carlos while he confronted the situation head-on. He drove to Tessa's workplace, a biotech research facility in Research Triangle Park. The receptionist was young and friendly. Can I help you? I'm looking for my wife, Tessa Renner. There's a family emergency. Oh, I'm sorry, but Tessa called in sick today. She's been out all week, actually. Malik's blood froze. All week? Since Monday. Didn't she tell you? She said she had some kind of stomach flu. Tessa had been leaving the house every morning pretending to go to work, but going somewhere else entirely. The hotel room in Raleigh, most likely. Malik drove to the Marriott, his mind racing. In the lobby, he approached the desk clerk with his most charming smile. Hi, I'm supposed to meet my wife in her room, but I forgot the number. Tessa Renner. The clerk checked her computer. I'm sorry, but I don't show a Tessa Renner registered. Maybe it's under Atwood? She sometimes uses her maiden name for business. Oh yes, here it is. Dr. Atwood in the penthouse suite. But sir, I can't give out room numbers to non-registered guests. Could you call up and let her know her husband is here? The clerk made the call. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a confused expression. I'm sorry, but Dr. Atwood says she doesn't have a husband and doesn't know who you are. Malik thanked her and left, his mind reeling. Tessa was in that hotel room, but she was denying his existence. The plan was accelerating. That afternoon, Malik made decisions that would either save his family or destroy it completely. He contacted a lawyer, a private investigator, and the FBI field office in Charlotte. The lawyer, James Morrison, was a family practice attorney who'd handled Carlos's divorce. "This is serious," Morrison said after reviewing Malik's evidence. "Insurance fraud, custody manipulation, possible drugging of a minor. But the problem is, most of your evidence was obtained illegally. What about the corporate espionage angle? That's where the FBI might help. If your wife is stealing proprietary information from her employer, that's a federal crime." The private investigator, a former police detective named Sarah Wu, was more encouraging. "I can legally document everything they're doing from now on," she said. "But I need you to understand, if they're planning to make you disappear, time is running out." The FBI agent, Special Agent Martinez, listened to Malik's story with professional skepticism until he mentioned Rosario's testimony about Dr. Atwood. "We've been looking into biotech fraud cases in the Southeast," Martinez said. "Dr. Atwood's name has come up before. If we can tie her to your wife's employer, we might have grounds for investigation." That evening, Malik made a decision that went against every moral principle he'd ever held. He was going to set a trap for his wife using their son as bait. The plan was simple and horrible. Malik would let Tessa think her plan was working while secretly documenting everything. When she made her move, law enforcement would be ready. But first, he had to make sure Calvin was safe. And he had to get one more piece of evidence that would seal Tessa's fate. He needed to find out what she'd stolen from her biotech company, and he needed to catch her in the act of selling it. Saturday morning arrived gray and humid, with thunderclouds building on the horizon. Malik sat in his truck outside a medical clinic in Chapel Hill, holding a manila envelope that contained results he wasn't sure he wanted to see. The paternity test, he'd submitted the DNA samples 3 days ago, using a strand of Calvin's hair from his pillow and his own saliva. The results had arrived by overnight mail, and Malik had been carrying them around for 2 hours without opening the envelope. Carlos sat in the passenger seat, patient but concerned. "You sure you want to know?" "I have to know. If I'm going to fight for Calvin, I need to understand what I'm fighting against." Malik tore open the envelope and pulled out the official laboratory report. The words blurred together at first, then came into sharp focus. Probability of paternity. 0% the tested man is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. Malik stared at the paper until the numbers stopped making sense. Calvin wasn't his son, had never been his son. 5 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, first steps, first words, all of it built on a lie. "Malik," Carlos's voice sounded far away. 0%. Malik's voice came out hollow. "Calvin's not mine." "Brother, that doesn't change anything. You raised that boy. You're still his father." But it changed everything, and they both knew it. In family court, biology mattered. Blood mattered. And Malik's blood ran through none of Calvin's veins. "She played the long game," Malik said slowly. "Got pregnant by someone else. Married me for stability, then planned to take everything when she was ready to move on. What are you going to do?" Malik folded the paper carefully and put it back in the envelope. "I'm going to destroy her before she destroys me." The next 48 hours became a carefully orchestrated campaign. Malik had learned strategic planning in the Marines, and now he applied those skills to domestic warfare. First, he filed an emergency injunction to prevent any property transfers or large withdrawals from their joint accounts. The lawyer, Morrison, expedited the paperwork through a judge who'd served in Iraq and understood military urgency. Second, he contacted the IRS fraud hotline and provided detailed information about Tessa's unreported income from biotech data sales. The tip included bank records, meeting locations, and dates that Carlos had documented. Third, he worked with Agent Martinez to set up a sting operation. If Tessa was selling corporate secrets, they would catch her in the act. But the most important part of Malik's plan involved psychological warfare. He was going to make Tessa believe she was winning right up until the moment she lost everything. Monday morning, Malik acted like a defeated husband. He told Tessa he'd been thinking about their relationship and maybe they needed some time apart. "I've been working too much," he said over coffee. "Not paying enough attention to you and Calvin. Maybe I should move out for a while, give you some space." Tessa's eyes lit up with carefully hidden triumph. "Malik, you don't have to do that. We can work through this." "No, I think it's for the best. I'll stay at Carlos's place for a few weeks. Give us both time to think." That afternoon, Malik packed a suitcase and made a show of leaving the house. But instead of going to Carlos's, he drove to a surveillance position 2 blocks away where Agent Martinez was waiting in an unmarked van. "She took the bait," Malik reported. "Made 3 phone calls within 10 minutes of me leaving." "Good. Dr. Atwood is already under federal surveillance. If your wife meets with her today, we'll have everything on tape." At 4:30, Tessa left the house carrying a laptop bag and drove to the Marriott in Raleigh. Agent Martinez followed at a distance while Malik coordinated with other federal agents positioned around the hotel. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Through surveillance equipment, they recorded Tessa handing over USB drives containing proprietary biotech research to Dr. Atwood, who paid her in cash. The conversation was clear and incriminating. "The last batch from the protein synthesis project," Tessa said. "This should be worth at least $50,000. "You've done excellent work," Dr. Atwood replied. "After we complete the custody transfer and insurance settlement, you'll have enough to disappear permanently." "What about Malik?" "Leave that to me. Industrial accidents happen all the time at meatpacking plants." Malik's blood turned to ice. They weren't just planning to frame him, they were planning to kill him. Agent Martinez moved fast. "We're taking him now. All units move in." But as federal agents surrounded the hotel, Dr. Atwood somehow slipped away. Tessa was arrested in the lobby, laptop bag in hand, USB drives still in her possession. "Malik Renner," she screamed as they put her in handcuffs. "You did this. You destroyed our family." "Our family was already destroyed," Malik said quietly. He stood watching from across the lobby as his wife was read her rights. "You just didn't tell me yet." The next morning brought developments that changed everything again. Dr. Atwood had fled, but not before making one final move that revealed the true scope of her criminal network. Agent Martinez called Malik at 6 in the morning. "We need you to come in immediately. Dr. Atwood left something for you." At the federal building, Martinez showed Malik a package that had been delivered overnight. Inside was a confession letter not from Dr. Atwood, but about her. The letter was from Calvin's biological father to Mr. Renner. "My name is Dr. Michael Chun. I work at the same biotech facility as your wife. 5 years ago, I had an affair with Tessa that resulted in her pregnancy. I wanted to marry her and raise our child, but she chose you instead for financial security. Dr. Atwood has been blackmailing me ever since, threatening to reveal my identity unless I helped her steal research data. I provided her with access codes and proprietary information, thinking I was protecting my son, that I never knew she was planning to hurt you or Calvin. When I learned about the insurance policy and custody fraud, I tried to back out. That's when Dr. Atwood threatened to kill Calvin unless I helped her frame you for corporate espionage. I'm turning myself in to the FBI today. I have evidence of Dr. Atwood's criminal network spanning multiple states. I hope this information helps protect Calvin and brings justice for what they did to your family. I know I have no right to ask this, but please take care of our son. You're the only father he's ever known. Dr. Michael Chin Malik read the letter twice, his emotions churning between rage and an unexpected sense of relief. Calvin's biological father wasn't some random stranger. He was a man who'd been victimized by the same criminals who targeted Malik's family. Dr. Chun is in protective custody, Agent Martinez explained. His testimony, combined with what we recorded yesterday, gives us enough evidence to dismantle Dr. Atwood's entire operation. What about Calvin? That's where things get complicated. With your wife facing federal charges and Dr. Chun in witness protection, custody becomes a legal maze. But Malik had one more card to play, something he discovered while going through Calvin's baby pictures the night before. "Agent Martinez, I need you to see something." Malik pulled out his phone and showed him a photograph. Calvin's hospital bracelet from the day he was born, with Malik's name listed as the father. "I was in the delivery room," Malik said. "I signed a birth certificate. Legally, I adopted Calvin the day he was born, even if I didn't know the biological truth. That might be enough for family court, but you'll need a good lawyer. I've got one, and I've got something else they don't expect. 2 weeks later, the custody hearing began in Durham County Family Court. Tessa sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, flanked by a public defender. Her high-priced lawyers had abandoned her when the federal charges became public. Malik wore his best suit and sat with Morrison, surrounded by evidence boxes and witness statements. The prosecutor had agreed to let the custody case proceed before the federal trial, understanding that Calvin's welfare couldn't wait for the criminal proceedings to conclude. Your Honor, Morrison began, this case involved a systematic campaign of fraud, deception, and child endangerment orchestrated by the defendant against her own family. Tessa's lawyer tried to paint Malik as an unstable veteran who'd manipulated the evidence through illegal surveillance. But Morrison was ready. Your Honor, I'd like to call our first witness, Rosario Mejia. Rosario took the stand wearing a simple blue dress, her hands shaking slightly as she was sworn in. But her voice was steady as she described Dr. Atwood's criminal history and the danger she posed to vulnerable families. This woman hurt many people, Rosario said. She used people like they are not human. Children are not safe around her. Morrison then presented the surveillance evidence, carefully explaining how each piece had been obtained legally through federal investigation. The USB drives containing stolen biotech data. The recorded conversations planning Malik's murder. The forged custody documents and insurance fraud. Dr. Chin's testimony about the blackmail scheme. But the moment that decided the case came when Morrison called Calvin to testify in the judge's chambers. Calvin, the judge said gently, "Do you understand why we're here today?" "Because Mama did bad things," Calvin said quietly. "And people want to take me away from Dad." "How do you feel about your dad?" Calvin looked at Malik with absolute trust. "He takes care of me. He reads me stories. When I'm scared, he makes me feel safe." "And your mama?" Calvin's face grew troubled. "Mama used to be nice, but then she started being different. She would talk to strangers about hurting Dad. I heard her." The judge made her decision that afternoon. The court finds overwhelming evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and child endangerment on the part of the biological mother. While Mr. Renner may not be the biological father, he is the only stable parental figure this child has known. She looked directly at Malik. "Sir, this child chose you as his father every day for 5 years. Biology is irrelevant compared to that bond. Full custody is granted to Malik Renner, with supervised visitation rights for the biological mother pending completion of her criminal proceedings." Tessa screamed as the bailiff led her away. "He's not even Calvin's real father. This is theft." Calvin pressed against Malik's side, and Malik wrapped his arms around his son because that's what Calvin was, regardless of DNA. "It's okay, buddy," Malik whispered. "We're going home." 3 months later, federal prosecutors announced the results of their investigation into Dr. Atwood's criminal network. She was arrested trying to cross the border into Mexico and faced charges in 4 states for biotech fraud, human trafficking, and conspiracy to commit murder. Tessa pleaded guilty to corporate espionage, insurance fraud, and child endangerment. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Dr. Chun entered the witness protection program, but arranged for child support payments to be sent to Calvin through a federal trust fund. The biotech company where Tessa worked was investigated for security breaches, and several executives were indicted for knowingly purchasing stolen research data. And on a warm Saturday afternoon in October, Malik sat on the back porch of a house he'd never expected to own. Carlos had helped him buy the place a small ranch with a big yard where Calvin could run and play safely. Rosario was there too, visiting from the immigrant women's clinic she'd opened with money from a federal victims compensation fund. She'd become like family, the honorary Aunt Calvin had never had. "Dad," Calvin called from the swing set Carlos had installed. "Watch me go higher." "I'm watching, buddy." Carlos joined Malik on the porch steps, both men holding cold beers and watching Calvin play. "You ever regret it?" Carlos asked. "Fighting so hard for a kid who isn't biologically yours." Malik watched Calvin pump his legs, soaring higher with each swing, his laughter carrying across the yard. "He is mine," Malik said simply. Blood doesn't make a father. Choice does. And I choose him every day. What about forgiveness? You ever think about forgiving Tessa? Malik's face hardened. Some things can't be forgiven. She tried to destroy an innocent child to get what she wanted. She would have let Calvin grow up thinking his father was dead or in prison. And Dr. Atwood is exactly where she belongs. Some people are just evil, Carlos. The world is safer with her locked up. Calvin ran over, grass stains on his knees and dirt smudged on his cheek. Dad, Rosario said she's making tamales tomorrow. Can we go help? Of course we can. Calvin climbed into Malik's lap, settling against his chest with the complete trust of a child who'd never doubted his father's love. Dad, tell me again about the day I was born. It was Calvin's favorite story, one Malik had embellished over the years to make it more magical for a little boy who needed to believe in something beautiful. Well, Malik began, it was the most important day of my life, because that was the day I became your dad. For real. For real. The moment I saw you, I knew you were mine. Not because of blood or DNA or any of that scientific stuff, but because of love. And love is stronger than anything else in the world. Calvin smiled and closed his eyes, listening to Malik's heartbeat as the sun set over their new life. Malik looked out at the yard where Carlos was teaching Rosario how to throw a football, at the small garden where they'd planted vegetables together, at the tire swing hanging from the old oak tree. This was his family now. Not the family he'd been born into or married into, but the family he'd chosen and fought for. The family that had chosen him back. And that was worth everything he'd lost along the way.